Hello, everyone. Welcome to this very special session on examples of early intervention services around the world. First of all, delighted to introduce Professor Nikos Stefanos to give his presentation. Dr. Stefanos is Professor of Psychiatry at the National and Kapodistrian University of Athens in Greece, and was and Vice Director of the University Mental Health Research Institute in Athens. So he's the first episode psychosis chair within the World Federation of Societies of Biological Psychiatry and the Greek Psychiatric Association as well. So I'd like to welcome Nikos to give his presentation. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor and pleasure to be able to participate in this year's IEPA's virtual conference. Sincerely like to thank the organizers for the kind invitation, and in particular the president of IEPA for this. Let me take you through the steps, that rather idiosyncratic steps that we undertook in Greece in order for us to reach the point we are considering the implementation of early intervention services for psychosis in my country. And let me start by showing you the hub, the center of operations. That is where I work. This is the first department of psychiatry in Athens, a Unitarian hospital. I'm the chair of psychiatry over there. And this hospital has been serving the community since 1904, when it was first established. It's in downtown Athens. Okay, let me start by the end. This is the results so far. So this is Mrs. Zoe Rapti, the Deputy Minister for Mental Health, debating the Article 48 to 256. That debate resulted in early intervention services for psychosis becoming law in my country since last December. So in many ways, this is the end point, and where we are actually right now is that the funding, the most important aspect of the whole process. And we are very much into negotiations regarding the funding that will come from the European Structural and Investment Fund. And I think that makes Greece one of the very few countries who have nowadays embedded early intervention for psychosis services within publicly funded health systems, national health systems. We're quite proud for that, actually. But the situation in Greece is not as good as one would wish when it comes to mental health and services for mental health, actually. This is the incidence that we estimate for first episode psychosis in Greece, from a very nice study conducted in Ioannina, a catchment area of around 300,000. And from that study, we know that the average young people who will get ill with psychosis for the first times in their lives are about 3,000 to 3,500 individuals per year. Now, indeed, we are not very happy. As you probably know and experience in your countries as well, funding and support for mental health is not very high on the list of priorities. In fact, in my country, it's probably at the lowest end, as you can see from this Hippocratic nice saying thousands of years ago. So things are not really good. Look at this national data, look at the exponential increase in the total number of admissions to hospitals for any psychiatric reason since 2012. That coincides with the Great Recession we had in my country and 2000 until 2019. And most worrying are the involuntary admissions And this same period, they have at least doubled in 8 years, as you can notice from this presentation, regardless if they are admissions in psychiatric hospitals in blue or general hospitals in red. So not a good situation. And even if you consider the community mental health centers that are there to support people who with a serious mental disorder after their hospitalizations, or in order to avoid hospitalizations, the situation is not really perfect. There are very few community mental health centers operating, and those who operate are certainly under-resourced with a huge waiting list, symptom-focused, offering no forms of psychotherapy. So despite these difficulties, the aura of early intervention services for psychosis has been apparent. There have been small outpatient units in Greece the last years who promote that type of intervention. Most noticeably, our service in Athens, which is an outpatient unit consisting of a day hospital, but also an acute inpatient unit. So this is the kind of treatment as usual rather than early intervention services. These are services we are awaiting. We are awaiting those early intervention services for psychosis to materialize by next year, I would think. So my personal involvement basically started as professor of psychiatry at the University of Western Australia. So in 2010, part of my workload, 50-50 academic, 50% clinical, was to work as a consultant in early intervention service for psychosis in Perth, Australia. That was a transforming experience. That was a life-transforming experience for me, a game changer. It was the first time that I practiced psychiatry in that kind of way. So leading a community team that was extremely active, that was extremely engaging with young patients who experienced their first episode of psychosis. It was indeed such a beautiful experience that I immediately felt I should do everything and try and implement this type of service back home in my country. So coming back to Greece around 2014, after 3.5 years in Australia, one of the first things we did was to establish a small research hub at the university in Athens. And this was the Athens first episode psychosis research team. Nobody was paid. We all had the same common interest, the common understanding. We devoted a lot of time and effort to build up a research for a team for first episode psychosis patients, and ultimately to talk about how we can transform a research-oriented approach to a more service-oriented approach in my country. So this initially research hub developed throughout the years. We have finished our first major assessment of the 225 first episode patients that we enrolled in that study, and have starting to look already at different aspects of that research outcomes that we have. Some of them I mentioned here. Some good results coming up in schizophrenia bulletin this year, and psychological medicine related to machine learning models predicting, for example, the response, the initial response of these young people to the initial treatment, or looking at the exposome, that aggregate environmental risk factor score that seems to be very important if you want to calculate your the overall environmental risk burden that each of these patients has, and how does that burden influence, for example, functionality of these young patients. So the other thing we did, as slowly expanding, was to create a postgraduate one-year educational program. Now this, again, took place within the university, and it was a way to alert people to early intervention services and the importance of them. And it has been running successfully, very successfully actually, for the last 3 years, disseminating the information, the necessary information for early intervention services to young students. But also attracting, at the same time, attracting the interest of our colleagues. So expanding our efforts to talk about early intervention services, we had numerous appointments and talks with colleagues, trying to discuss with them the merits of early intervention services for psychosis. That resulted in editorial in a local psychiatric journal, Psychiatriki, a few years ago in 2019. With it was like basically a consensus statement from most important academic and clinicians in my country. We were very much inspired by the main theme of early intervention, the priority of early intervention that even the previous president of the WPA put forward with her editorial in 2000, some years ago, promoting and making a point that early intervention is indeed the priority for world psychiatry. These are the inspirations that we started working on, and we realized very quickly that in order to have an impact, we should start communicating with the political establishment if we wanted to make any meaningful reforms in mental health system. So, for example, what Norman Lamb has done in the UK, he has been advocating for mental health for youth in UK for many years, and he has been very successful. And that's an example of somebody who actually brought that communication that is necessary between people who are serve the mental health system, but at the same time have the political will and power to implement those very needed things to be done at a political level. So eventually, one needs to start communicating at that level, at that political level, if you really want to make an impact. And that took us through a series of meetings with ministers of the previous governments. That took us through a series of meetings with ministers of the current government, and this is on the right, Zoe Rapti, the Deputy Minister for Mental Health. In these meetings, we're very much inspired by particular publications that seem to outline what is exactly the process by which you want to make a transformation from a local clinical intervention to a much broader health system implementation. And this is a very good example of those articles that I'm showing you over here now. And in that process of talking and discussing with politicians, I think I have my favorite list of what not to do and what to do that I am showing to you here. I think it's imperative not to use scientific jargon. We really need to avoid, when talking to politicians, using the language that we communicate between us in different conferences, for example. It has to be very simple, to the point, or almost bullet point kind of level. I certainly felt that not exaggerate the benefits beyond any meaningful, understandable, and evidence-based kind of level. I certainly felt that I would not conceal any, in these discussions I had with politicians, any valid concerns or criticisms that have been addressed regarding early intervention services for psychosis. We all know, for example, that the compared to treatment as usual, our services, even the best of them, the early intervention for psychosis services, do not have a very huge effect size. So this needs to be taken into account. What you need to do, I think, and this is my personal understanding, idiosyncratic understanding, is that you need to engage in bipartisan talks. You don't need to be completely identified with a political party. You need to be able to discuss these issues that are related to mental health with everybody in the political realm. It's very important to stick to the cost effectiveness of the services. We all know that they're cost effective, and that's a point that politicians really like to hear. And what they seem to have been posing to me, one of the two major questions they have been posing to me is, who is the party who is going to disagree with implementation of these services? And that took us to another type of talks and discussions with, for example, the private sector, which felt initially that they would probably lose some of the clientele if these early intervention services were going to be implemented. In the study I mentioned at the beginning that showed us the incidence of first episode psychosis in Greece, half of those cases that arose were treated by private psychiatrists, not by psychiatric services within the national health system. I think the personal narrative of a story, of a video of a family before the interventions and after the interventions, for example, is an extremely powerful message, and probably more powerful than any scientific journal you will want to forward to the people who are interested. A simple video showing the actual change that actually can take place is a very, very powerful media-related instrument that can be used for purposes of promoting your services. And obviously involve stakeholders and national support networks as much as possible in the process. Now, where did this advocacy end? It ended by the Ministry of Mental Health commissioning a service, commissioning a committee. This early intervention for psychosis committee convened for almost 2 years and produced a document that was adopted by the Ministry of Health. And this document outlined basically two things. It outlined what we thought the legislation should be like and what we thought the organizational framework of these services should be like. So it was a combined legislation / organization kind of document that the ministry adopted and internally discussed in order to reach their conclusion later the year. At the same period of time, around 2018, what we found that was extremely influential and promoting the creation of these services was having the experts visit us. And Professor Magori from Australia, Professor Kane from the States came over and gave two very, very powerful lectures at the Department of Psychiatry at our hospital. And we had people who were not only colleagues, high esteemed colleagues, but also members of parliament, also advocates for mental health. It was an extremely influential move, and I think it really, really made people very much talking about early intervention services for psychosis. Professor Kane over here talking about his RAISE study that was had just been published in 2018. Very, very influential talks indeed. And the president of the WPA kindly sent a very nice letter of support to the Minister of Health in Greece, also making the point that for the necessity to create these services, and to which the government has obviously been very, very responsive. The previous government, this government have been extremely responsive to these messages. So we are now at the process of funding. We are debating that funding. We are hopeful that we will have at least 5 or 6 pilot such early intervention services for psychosis in Greece. And I'll be able to let you know in the near future if this funding is sufficient and if this funding has sustainability. That is also a very important other aspect that we need to take place. Finally, let me just finish by extending a warm invitation to all of you. I am the co-president of the next WPA thematic Congress on early intervention in psychiatry across the lifespan. This is an open invitation to you all. It's fantastic to see you all in Athens between the 23rd and the 25th of June, where this Congress will take place. And I must say, I'm amazed with how all the extremely high caliber colleagues from around the world have rushed to submit their symposia. I think it will be a great success, and I'm waiting to see you all in Athens this June. Thank you very much for your attention.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Nikos, for an inspiring presentation. It's my pleasure to introduce our friend and colleague, Professor Seung-Won Kim. Professor Kim is from Channam National University Medical School in Kwangjeong in South Korea, and he is a professor of psychiatry and head of the group there. So Dr. Kim's research and clinical work focus on the early identification and treatment of youth and young adults with severe mental illness. He was a visiting professor at Origin Youth Health in Melbourne, Australia in 2013, and subsequently he founded MindLink, the first community-based youth-specific early intervention centre in Korea. And we're looking forward to hearing your presentation, Dr. Kim, of a stigma-free, youth-friendly, community-based early intervention in Korea.
Hello, I am Seung-Won Kim from Channam National University Medical School, South Korea. It is great pleasure to present our early intervention service model. The title of my presentation is a stigma-free, youth-friendly, community-based early intervention model in Korea. The suicide rate in Korea is very high. It is more than 2 times greater than OECD average. In Korea, 90% of all suicides are attributable to an emotional or psychiatric conditions such as depression, schizophrenia, or alcohol dependence. However, the rate of psychiatric treatment for people with mental problems is very low compared to Western countries. This low accessibility to psychiatric treatment is attributed to the high stigma of mental illness in Korea. Stigma may also contribute to the long duration of untreated psychosis in Korea. The DUP, which is related to a poor prognosis for patients with schizophrenia, is comparatively long in Korea relative to that of Western countries. Therefore, we are trying to develop a new mental health system for individuals with mental illness, especially young people. We launched a special community mental health center for young people called MindLink. MindLink tries to link young patients with mental illness to treatment resources, education, employment, and ultimately recovery. It connects community mental health service and hospitals, mental and physical health, patient and family members, and personal life and society. MindLink service model has been recently published in Early Intervention in Psychiatry. I will present our experience with MindLink, the first early intervention center in Korea. This is a history of MindLink. A community-based early intervention service for youth was first introduced in 2012, when a special team was formed in my Community Mental Center of Korea. As the numbers of young clients increased, a youth-friendly early intervention center called MindRink was opened in 2016. MindRink targets those aged 50 to 30 years with mental illness less than 5 years in duration. This slide shows characteristics of MindRink service users. In total, about 200 young people registered for service and special case management. Their mean age was about 25 years and 45% were male. The most common diagnosis was schizophrenia spectrum disorder, including first episode schizophrenia. Depression was the second most common diagnosis, followed by ultra risk of psychosis and bipolar disorder. An average number of new clients visiting MindRink for short-term counseling was 461 per year for the recent 3 years. Problems related to depression were the most common, followed by issues with schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and anxiety disorders. Their mean age was about 25 years and 36% were male. This figure shows the routes of referral to MindRink. In the first and second years of operation, most members were referred from hospitals, including my university hospital. However, in recent 2 years, self-referrals by patient and family members increased by about 50%. In most cases, patients and their family members voluntarily accessed MindRink after searching for youth mental health service on the internet, or after receiving recommendation from their friends. This reflects how a special customer-friendly youth mental health center can help change the mental health environment. The key features of MindRink model is early detection of mental illness in young people, followed by comprehensive multidisciplinary interventions. We provide group cognitive behavioral therapy, physical health promotion programs, family intervention, and intensive case management to young individuals with early psychosis or other mental disorders. We have published a paper showing effect of a Korean version of group cognitive behavioral therapy for patients with early psychosis. Our group CBT consisted of 15 sessions. The first part, meta-cognitive training, which was developed at the University Medical Center Hamburg-Eppendorf in Germany, aims to enhance patient awareness on cognitive bias and flexibility. After practicing cognitive restructuring, patients are encouraged to adapt the skills in real life. Subsequent sessions focus on stress and time management and enhance self-esteem. Group CBT had a positive effect on the quality of life attitude toward treatment, perceived stress, depression, and suspiciousness of patient with early psychosis. These effects were particularly significant in patients with a short duration of untreated psychosis. In 2013, we developed a smartphone application designed to deliver real-time case management and self-directed cognitive behavioral therapy services to young patients with early psychosis. This mobile application, named Heal Your Mind, includes 6 main modules, including thought record, symptom record, daily life record, official notices, communication, and scales. This slide shows thought record diary. The key module is the thought record for self-directed CBT. When the client writes and sends the self-CBT sheet to the case manager, the latter receives a notification and can provide feedback in real time. This can facilitate the self-CBT process and provide positive reinforcement. This slide shows symptom record. This module allows clients to rate their psychiatric symptoms in terms of thought, voices, anxiety, depression, and other phenomena using a Likert scale and to provide a description of each symptom. Ratings by clients are stored in graphic form, representing changes in symptom severity. These data are shared with case managers to help monitor clients' symptoms and signs of relapse. More than 80% of participants reported that it was easy to learn to use this application, and 70% reported that they received help as a result of using this application. This smartphone application for case management may contribute to the development of both young customer and case manager friendly systems for early psychosis population. We developed 10 sessions of family intervention program and 6 sessions of psychoeducation for clients with early psychosis. Our previous research revealed that a long DUP was significantly associated with poorer family cohesion in patients with first episode psychosis. Furthermore, strongly expressed emotions are well known to be closely associated with relapse and poor outcomes among patients with psychosis. So we developed a group family intervention program featuring 6 sessions involving psychoeducation and 4 sessions focusing on communication and stress management. This is a study for nutrition in patients with schizophrenia. Inappropriate dietary intake and poor nutritional status are reported to be associated with metabolic syndrome and psychopathology in patients with schizophrenia. We hypothesized that inappropriate dietary habits and insufficient dietary intake of specific nutrients are associated with psychosis. To test this hypothesis, we assessed the dietary habits and nutritional intake of patients with schizophrenia, and then developed suitable dietary guidelines. As a result of this study, the proportion of overweight or obese patients was significantly higher in patients with schizophrenia compared with control subjects. The male patient with schizophrenia had significantly lower dietary intakes of polyunsaturated fatty acid than control. Based on these study results, we developed dietary guideline for Korean patients with schizophrenia. We have also developed educational materials for nutritional support for patients with psychosis. This is example for vitamin D. It includes the effect of nutrition, dietary requirements, which foods to eat to obtain each nutrient, and amount of food needed to meet daily requirements. This newspaper introduced MindRink service. When a crime such as a murder involves a patient with schizophrenia, many newspaper reporters request interviews with me about the dangers of patients with schizophrenia. However, we also try to provide information about MindRink to reduce the stigma of schizophrenia. Another Korean newspaper reported on MindRink and how it has improved mental health service use and decreased the number of hospitalization days. A mirror imaging analysis revealed the number of hospitalization in the total population between before and after the early intervention service began. In the study population, the total number of hospitalization days decreased from about 2,000 to 400 days. Our experience with MindRink has yielded positive results, encouraging nationwide expansion. We have published about 30 research papers for developing evidence-based early intervention model. The Korean government has officially committed to expanding MindRink to other provinces in Korea. Many young people with distressing mental illness and their family members now voluntarily visit MindRink for help. They are seeking early psychiatric treatment despite the major associated stigma. Although stigma is problematic, low investment in effective mental health service may be of greater concern. Our experience with the MindRink model suggests that investment in youth mental health and good service delivery can overcome stigma and other barriers to early access to mental health services. In conclusion, we believe that MindRink is a good model of early intervention and that similar models can be effectively applied in other Asian countries. Thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you so much, Sun Wan Kim. It's a pleasure to listen to you also and be inspired by your work. I now have the great pleasure to introduce three colleagues from Tunisia who will be talking to us about the clinical high-risk program in Tunis. They'll tell us about that. And the three colleagues come from the Razi Hospital in Tunis. First is Dr. Uta Wali, who works as a senior psychiatrist in this Department of Psychiatry in the Razi Hospital and is a lecturer at the University of Tunis El Manar Medical School. Dr. Amina Issa from the same department is assistant professor at the University of Tunis El Manar Medical School and works as a senior psychiatrist in the Department of Razi Hospital. And then Dr. Amin Lanou from the same department in Razi Hospital is an early career psychiatrist working as an assistant professor in the hospital. He has been president of the Tunisian Early Career Psychiatrist Association. And I'm pleased to say too, from knowing him in this role, that he's currently the North Africa representative for the World Psychiatric Association. So he's a member of the board of the WPA. And he's been a member of the IEPA since 2019. So I'd now like to welcome this presentation.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Now we are pleased to present today the Clinical High Risk Program, also called CHIRP, and the challenges and successes in setting up this service for early detection and intervention in Tunisia, which is a country situated in North Africa. Now, this talk will be presented by Dr. Amina Issa, Dr. Amin Lernaoud, and myself, Dr. Uta Wali. We are all senior psychiatrists at Razi University Hospital, and we are also all founding members of this clinical high risk program. Now, all the three of us have no conflicts of interest to declare. Now, what concerns the plan of our presentation? So I'm going to start by presenting the development and the current status of the service. Then Dr. Amina Issa is going to talk about the challenges we faced in implementing this service. And at last, Dr. Amin Lernaoud is going to talk about the achievements, successes, and perspectives for our service. Now, I'm going to start by telling you what motivated us to the development of this service. As you can imagine, in fact, in Tunisia, as in many other low and middle income countries, the emphasis of mental health care is not on prevention so far, but more on the treatment of patients with severe mental illness and mostly in their later stages, where functioning and prognosis are already highly compromised. Therefore, a group of engaged Tunisian psychiatrists and psychiatry residents initiated in 2018 this program, the Clinical High Risk Program, in collaboration with Dr. Ventura from University of California at Los Angeles, UCLA. Now, he started by giving training workshops in the detection and diagnosis of patients at a clinical high risk, introducing us to validated scales like the CARMS, the BPRS, and structured interviews like the SCID, for example. And as you can see here in the photo on the left, this is Dr. Ventura during his first training workshops at our Razi Hospital in May 2018. And in the middle, the photo shows the first group of psychiatrists that have been trained by Dr. Ventura. Now, afterwards, a group of core raters, 9 core raters, in fact, continued an online supervision with Dr. Ventura. And further to this, starting from 2019, and with the help of a Fulbright grant that Dr. Ventura received, he was able to supervise the further development of our service. Now, what are the aims of our service? These are, of course, globally preserve and improve the mental health of vulnerable groups in Tunisia through early identification and diagnosis, through the care and through the training of primary care clinicians and mental health professionals in early intervention and prevention, through also awareness raising and education of the public, as well as through research projects. Here is a photo of, or here's a slide which shows our CHIRP team. What you can see here is, in fact, the permanent team, but the whole team is composed, in fact, of mental health professionals from two tertiary care hospitals of the Greater Tunis area, which is Montjislim University Hospital and Razi University Mental Hospital. But apart from this permanent team, whose members you see here on the photos, and who are all senior psychiatrists, and we have a group of psychiatry residents who rotate in and out of the service. And in the middle, once again, you see Dr. Mantura from UCLA, with whom we are collaborating. As you can imagine, the vulnerable youth, of course, is not consulting tertiary care centers in the first place. So we are collaborating with health professionals of the first line of care. We have established a collaboration with health professionals of La Manubas district, which is the district which is really close to the hospital, and it's where we started. So we train primary care clinicians and school nurses. And further to this, we are now training mental health professionals in centers of school and university medicine, and psychologists working as university counselors in the Greater Tunis area. My colleague, Dr. Amin Larnaoud, is going to talk more about our outreach activities later on. Now, this slide shows the pathways we established for screening, diagnosis, and care of our help-seeking youth. Now, these help-seeking youth will be screened for clinical signs of prodromal states and eventually administered the PQB by the primary care physicians, nurses, and mental health professionals that we have trained. If these individuals are suspected to be at clinical high risk, they are referred to our CHIRP team, where they are assessed by our trained mental health professionals. They receive thorough clinical and neurocognitive examinations, and questionnaires such as the CARMS, BPRS, and SCID are administered. If the individual is at clinical high risk, the care and follow-up will be done through our CHIRP team. However, if the individual is suffering from other disorders, it might be referred to other services according to their needs. What are the patient management, or what is the treatment that we propose at CHIRP? Now, it's first of all, of course, lifestyle measures. So patients are educated to adopt healthy lifestyle, which promotes more mental health being and stress reduction. We also offer psychotherapy. So usually we provide supportive psychotherapy for all patients, and more structured form of psychotherapy, such as cognitive behavioral therapy for some patients. We also provide social support, offer cognitive remediation, and in some cases also medication. In addition, we provide continuous clinical and neurocognitive assessment. Now, at last, I'd like to give you a brief overview of the type of patients we included so far, and I'm going to show you which treatment they received and what their outcome was. So far, we included 32 patients whose mean age was about 20 years, and 2/3 of them were males. Of these 32 patients, 26 turned out to be clinical high risk positive, so as established by the CARMS. 24 of them were in the attenuated group and 2 in the vulnerability group. Treatment-wise, so all of them received supportive psychotherapy or social support measures. 7 of them received CBT, 15 had medication management, and 5 of them received cognitive remediation. So as to the outcome, 3 of these patients transitioned to psychosis. 1 reversed to be Carnes negative, and 4 of these patients were lost to follow-up. Now, thank you, and I'm going to pass on to Dr. Amina Aissa.
So, hello everyone. I will talk in my part about challenges. So, the implementation of our program was not without challenges that were sometimes hard to overcome, and being the very first program in our region and in low and middle income country double the weight of these challenges. So we had then to overcome the difficult socio-economic context in our country, the consequent lack of human resource, the stigma and lack of knowledge about mental illness in our society, and the lack of coordination between different stakeholders, as in all developing countries. Add to all this came the COVID crisis and lack of access to online services. So, as you all may know, the Arab Spring was spread from Tunisia in 2011, and it is obvious that there have been some democratic gain over the past 10 years. Social peace, however, is exposed to numerous threats linked to governance difficulties, economic inertia, and continuous movement of protests and demands related to the unresolved problem of social injustice, regional imbalance, and youth unemployment. So, yes, certainly on the economic level, the situation is difficult because of the low economic growth. This graph shows that in Tunisia, the number of researchers has increased continuously from 1,088 research back in 2007 to almost 2,000 research in 2016. And the number of scientific and technical journals articles goes hand in hand with this trend from less than 2,500 to almost 6,000 articles in 2016. And unfortunately, the development of scientific research has not been financially supported by the state. In fact, the sector is receiving less and less financial support from the state, with the degrees of gross domestic expenditures on research and development falling from 0.7% of GDP in 2011 to 0.59% in 2016. For comparison, in 2018, research and development expenditure accounted for a bit more than 2% in France, around 3% in Germany, and the highest percentages were 3.33 in Sweden and almost 5 in Israel. Apart from the social, economical, and political specific challenges, it looks that the public hospital, medical research, and university are no longer attractive to young doctors. In Chile, we lack university hospital doctors, many of whom are leaving for the private sector. For those who stay, they face also an imbalance between hospital practice, teaching, and research, with most time dedicated to clinical work. There is also the brain drain, with the departure of many young psychiatry residents recruited and trained to evaluate prodromal conditions to Europe. For example, all 5 residents trained and recruited in 2018 during our first training by Professor Ventura left for other countries. Stigma is another hidden player playing against our efforts. In this paper, on the opinion of Tunisian mothers about their child's first episode psychosis, it was found that the average duration of untreated psychosis was about 11 months, which is quite long. More than that, 95% of the mothers had not initially suspected psychotic disorder in their child, and 63 of them attributed the child's symptoms to possession by evil spirits. Fear of stigmatization, found in 70% of cases, was the main reason for delaying psychiatric consultation. Another paper on the pathways to mental health care for patients with severe mental illnesses in Tunisia, conducted in 2019, found that more than the third of the study population consulted a traditional healer in the first place. The average consultation delay was 15 months, with a median of 6 months. The main reason of delayed consultation was lack of knowledge about psychiatric symptoms, followed by illness beliefs. And now our program adds to the few national programs that have targeted adolescents and youth, such as the National Program Against Substance Use or the National Program for Suicide Prevention. However, these programs are not integrated and would benefit from a more intersectoral biopsychosocial approach. So we are facing the major challenge, which is lack of coordination between different programs and stakeholders. Finally, COVID did not help improve the situation with the imposed lockdown and many patients not benefiting from access to online devices. And thank you.
So, despite of all the challenges that Dr. Raisa told about, we were able to make some achievements and successes, let's say. And our, let's say, our biggest achievement was came from our work with early career psychiatrists. As from our birth in 2018 and until 2021, we have at least 110 early career psychiatrists that had the training on the detection and management of clinical high-risk states, and which is a big number compared to the small country in which we are and the small our small team. And at least 40 of them had further training on CARMS, SOFAS, and BPRS, which is also a big number. But unfortunately, we deplore the leave of these early career psychiatrists to other countries. Not all of them stayed in Tunisia. But the general outcome is good, as the recognition of clinical high-risk state in the country and among early career psychiatrists increased significantly. And it became even a subject, a field of interest of early career psychiatrists, as you may see here in this poster. This is the poster of the 8th Congress of JEMC, the early career psychiatrists in Tunisia, and the theme of this year, it will be vulnerability in psychiatry. So youth, young psychiatrists became really interested in vulnerability and in clinical high risk. Another achievement is the collaboration with the Ministry of Health. And in 2020, we started a collaboration with the Department of School and University Medicine in the Ministry of Health. And this collaboration gave us the opportunity to train all, and I say all, the psychologists, psychiatrists, and child psychiatrists of the capital, Tunis, and suburbs. So it was really a good achievement, as almost 30 psychiatrists, psychologists, and child psychiatrists have been trained on detection and, let's say, a little bit management of clinical high-risk states. And here is a program of training of these of psychiatrists, psychologists, of school psychiatrists and psychologists. It's still running on, and you can see in the photo the group of psychologists and psychiatrists in training, and you can see there in the bottom, far there, me and Dr. Amina Isa conducting the training. Here is our first publication, establishing a clinical high-risk program in Tunisia, North Africa. So you can refer to it if you want. You will find more details about our program, about the establishment of our program. And now we move to perspectives, which what is under construction. Under construction, we have a research protocol and cognitive remediation versus physical activity versus treatment as usual for the management of clinical high-risk patients. We have also under construction a research protocol on immunological markers in clinical high-risk patients, which is a program that will start soon. And we are working hard to have a grant from NIMH so that we could at least spread a little bit more our wings. A very important thing also, our website, which is also under construction, but it will be released very soon, and you can find there our services, our activities, some psychoeducational slides in order to raise the public awareness about our subject. We dream of, so we are a small team in a small country, but we have high hopes. And our highest hope is raising awareness, public awareness, and fighting stigma. It's a high hope, but maybe we can we can do it one day. We dream of a Tunisian protocol for the screening and management of clinical high-risk patients, our own protocol, which will be specific to our country and to our region. We dream of a national strategy on the detection of clinical high-risk states, also in youth. So it will be something adopted in all countries, in all centers affiliated to our team, maybe. We dream of being spread everywhere in Tunisia. We dream of helping our colleagues establish their clinical high-risk programs also around our country. And we dream of being spread in our region. And this is not a manic idea, but it's a reality. As soon as our article was published in 2021, we have been approached by some teams in other Arab countries, like from Morocco, Egypt, or Saudi Arabia. They sent us mails to ask for our help to establish their protocol and to hear from our experience. So it's a dream, but maybe it will become true one day. I would like at the end to thank you very much for your attention and hope to see you in person one day in an IEPA meeting. Thank you, IEPA, for this great opportunity. Thank you.
Well, thank you to our colleagues in Tunisia, to Dr. Wali, Dr. Aisa, and Dr. Lano, that you really demonstrate your wonderful teamwork and describe so clearly both the challenges and the successes that you've achieved. So I'm now delighted to introduce colleagues from Chile to speak to us. And we have Dr. Alfonso González Valderrama and Dr. Christian Mena, both coming to us from Universidad Finisterre and the Early Intervention in Psychosis program, PROITP, and from the Barak Psychiatric Institute in Santiago in Chile. So Dr. González is a psychiatrist and member of the Latin American Network for the Study of Early Psychosis and Director of General Adult Psychiatry Specialty and Assistant Professor of Psychiatry in the School of Medicine at the university. And Dr. Mena is also a psychiatrist and a member of the same Latin American network for the study of early psychiatrists and psychosis, and assistant professor of psychiatry at the School of Medicine in the university in Santiago, Chile. So I'd like to introduce the presentation on the development of the service. Thank you. Development of
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming, and it's an honor for us to present our program and with my colleague and friend, Cristian Mena. And we're going to share with you our development of an early intervention in psychosis program in Chile, successes, barriers, and challenges. Next. Okay, next. Well, we're going to start where we are. We are in Chile. Chile is a long country at the end of South America. And we work at Santiago, its capital, with 9 million people. And this is our catchment area with 1 million people, with 10% of poverty. And we are part of public mental health system. And this is our institute. Our institute has two parts: 8 wards with inpatients or inpatient wards and outpatient clinics. As an early intervention in psychosis program, we have 2 parts. One is the inpatient unit, an inpatient ward just for first episode of psychosis, and outpatient clinic, and we follow up this patient. And this is our team, more younger than now, I think, but we are a multidisciplinary team with psychiatrists, psychologists, occupational therapists, psychiatric nurse, and social worker. Next. You know that probably early intervention in psychosis model of care is widely implemented around the world, but especially in high-income countries. But the reality is that in Latin America, for example, just 4 countries have particular or just few services under this model, just in Chile, Argentina, Brazil, and Mexico. And we can see this in this scoping review by David Aceituno. So I think that it's important for us to show and to share our experience, especially because we need to implement this model in other countries, especially in Latin America. And we want to share with you our experience, but it's important for us where we are and where we're going to. And this is the first episode psychosis service fidelity scale developed by Donald Addington. And I think that it's a good start for us to assess where we are and what are the challenges for our services in Chile, in one of Latin American country, and I think it could be an example to other services. Next, I'm going to share with you the outcomes of our program through the FEPS fidelity scale. So the score is from 1 to 5. 5 is the optimal, and 1 is well, the lowest score. And I tried to put in this light traffic signal to show the different parts and the different areas in our services today. So as you can see, well, we have a team leader that provides administrative direction and supervision to different staff and provides direct clinical service. So we have 5 in this. But the next 4 items, we have just 1, and there are 2 reasons for that. Because we have a lot of patients. We now in the last 5 years, we have seen more than 300 first episode of psychosis patients. So and our participant provider ratio is too high. The other thing is we don't have a care coordinator or a case managing model. So this is very important for us because we have to develop this because it's an essential part of our neurointervention in psychosis service. And the other thing is the psychiatrist caseload is too high, with more than 130 per 0.2 full-time equivalents. So I think that this situation is common for Latin American countries because we don't have a lot of resources and we have to see a lot of patients with not too many professionals. Next. Okay, the psychiatrist role on team, we are very active as a psychiatrist, and we have a weekly multidisciplinary team meetings, and it's very important for us to have these meetings every week. We have explicit diagnostic admission criteria, but we are inside of this psychiatric institute. We are not exactly a community service. So the inpatient unit is our the main source of the referral to the outpatient clinic. More than 80% of our patients. So we serve, our population is a little, I think, more severe than the community, and probably we see no more than 20% of an incident cases. So another characteristic of our services, we see users between 15 and 35, not to 65, that it's common in another services. And the duration of our program is more than 3 years. It's a good thing because we follow up these patients a lot of time, so it's a good thing. Next. Well, I think that this it's not we are under the early intervention in psychosis model. So, but we are not in contact with the community too much. So this it's not a good thing. And the other thing is, as we said, as I said, more than 80% of our patients comes from an inpatient care, not from community. But a good thing is our patients, we see our patient within 2 weeks of referral. So this is a very good thing. And probably as the family of first episode of psychosis are too involved and concerned. So they are very, and especially in the beginning, more families are involved in the initial assessment. And the other thing is we do a comprehensive clinical assessment, but I think that our records shows that our psychosocial needs assessment is not too high. So we have to it's a thing that we have to improve. Next. Okay, and the other thing is this item is that patients have a clinical sign-off treatment plan. So we didn't do, it's not common for us involve the patient on this way. So we have to do more. And the other thing, it's a good thing, it's all the antipsychotic prescription. And because we follow the recommendations, and clozapine is one of the more than 30% of our patients are with clozapine, so it's a very good thing. But psychosocial interventions are not too developed in our service, especially cognitive behavior therapy. Next. So the other thing is supporting health management. We are 3, it's a yellow light traffic sign. And the other thing is the annual formal comprehensive assessment is not too, we do this job, but it's not on the record. So we have to do that. And the other thing is we work with substance use center. And this is a good thing for us because it's, you know that it's a very prevalent comorbid disorder in our population. Next. And the other thing that we do, but not completely, is supported employment and supported education. And our occupational therapist is trained in individual placement and support, but some items of these interventions is not complete. But we are very concerned about that this is an essential intervention in our population. We don't have an active engagement and retention, so we have to do something about that. And the last one. Okay, and we have a good patient retention, don't have a crisis intervention service. And the other thing is the communication between first episode of psychosis and inpatient service. Of course, it's too, we work with the inpatient unit, and timely contact after discharge from hospital is 80% are seen within 14 days of hospital discharge. So at the end of the day, this is our score, 57.6, and recommendable percentage is more than 80%. So we have to do other things, but I think that this is a good point of to start to do different things and develop our service in more and in high quality. And well, we do a lot of things, but we want to go and we want to develop more this our service.
So, hi everybody, my name is Cristian Mena, and we are going to continue in this presentation. And we want to consider all the Alfonso's presentation, and we want to put over the table this question to start the second part of the presentation. So what else could we include to address the work and the development of early intervention in psychosis services in the real world? So we want to start this part of the presentation with our users, which are the more important objective of our services. So let's see them. So we want to try to answer the question using three examples of what we maybe can include apart from all the FEPS scale. So we want to talk to you about the user participation and the co-production of services, the family's involvement and tailoring of services, and vocational specificities in different regions worldwide. First, the user's participation. We want to tell you, we want to show you the experience of the Pro-ITP youth group. This is a peer support group guided by an occupational therapist. It works in our institute, in our center, and with weekly meetings since 2014. It has around 15 participants, between 12 and 18 participants. Most of them are part from our program. The group defined topics and activities. The picture shows us the first meeting after a long lockdown during the pandemic of COVID-19. But that's not all. That's not the. There is not all. There's not only the meetings. This fantastically, this group evolved to other roles. For example, they are acting like experts by experience, participating in program definition. For example, they help us to define that we're going to use the term psychosis instead of schizophrenia. They also have an active participation in the program's website, writing news and making Instagram feeds and different posts. They also have help us in advocacy activities, such as the World Mental Health Day for last year and for this year. And you have here the poster of the activity at an interview they made for this last World Mental Health Day. And they also have this special role in supporting each other during the COVID-19 pandemic. So first is our users. Second one, the families and the families' involvement. And we want to tell you about the Pro-ITP multi-family psychoeducational model. It is a development of the last 15 years, and it starts in an inpatient setting, like show and tell you Alfonso in his part. And since 2020, evolved to an online weekly service. This is a picture of the inpatient sessions, and in the picture, there is one of our professionals guiding the meeting. And the model of this multifamily psychoeducation is based on three parts. First one is the scientific evidence. Second one is the clinical experience of our team. But the most important part is the families and caregivers share experience, their feedback and their suggestions. And this is very important because it allows us the incorporation of new contents and suggestions from families. So the final product or the final result is this. We have a yearly contents. This is the 2021 contents of 12 sessions with different themes, but the themes are defined by the families. And with this feedback, constant feedback between families and team. Every year we have between 3 to 4, maybe sometimes 5 cycles of the psychoeducation. Many families are in this new model of online psychoeducation. Many families are participating in more than one cycle. Finally, we want to speak to you about the vocational specificities, mainly the support and employment and education. We know that both one are evidence-based strategies to treat and to help people with first episode of psychosis. They are also included, like Alfonso told us, in the FEPS. However, evidence comes mainly from the global North studies, and we know that, we believe that there are work specificities worldwide. We have a path regarding with these vocational specificities, and mainly with the IPS model. That path, that road began on 2016 in the IEPA conference at Milan. And we start from that moment in the 2017 and 2018, different activities, a translation of the fidelity to Spanish of the IPS fidelity scale, a training workshop with Luana Turner from UCLA. She came to Chile to help us in that. And most parts of our team did the IPS online course. We have about 8 to 9 members of our team with that IPS course. In the 2018, we did a focus group with the youth group members and other pro-ITP users, and we presented the results in the IEPA and IFIS joint meeting at Boston. Everything went well, but up to 2019, but several changes in our team stopped us, and we stopped and even maybe go some down with the COVID pandemic. It's regarded with mainly with the changes in our team, but we realized how barriers in the implementation of the IPS model. For example, as I said before, local context of each country or culture could show us some differences in how work is understood. Employment and education specialists are not considered yet in public policies in our country, and that it is funding barriers, that are funding barriers. And also there are always resistance from mental health teams to incorporate work or educational specialists to their daily work. So that's the 3 examples that we want to put over the table to in order to advance to this evaluation of the fidelity. Our final conclusions are the FEPS is a useful guideline to develop early intervention in psychosis services. Users and their families are essential components in the development of new projects of EIP services worldwide, and more evidence is needed for the implementation of early intervention services in low and middle income countries. So many thanks to everyone to listen us. This is our acknowledgements, and mainly, and of course, many thanks to all of our users and their families.
Well, thank you, everyone. My name's Helen Herman, talking to you from Melbourne, and I've had the privilege, along with the whole audience, to listen to these 4 extraordinary presentations. When I reflect on the fact that we've been listening to colleagues from Greece, Korea, Tunisia, and Chile, it's a great international experience. And I'd like to ask each of you to reflect on something to begin with, but then could I encourage you also to ask any questions you have of each other? But as we begin, we've had the four of you talking about your pioneering efforts in your own countries. And each of you has described some very eloquently, some of the challenges of beginning. I'd like to, if I could ask, perhaps we begin in order of presentation. So we ask Professor Stefanos to begin. What actually sparked your interest? You could have taken a very different career path, but what prompted you to move into this challenging area?
All right, thank you for that. And hi to everybody in the panel. I suppose it was a combination of things, Helen. It was my background. So I've got a Maudsley Institute of Psychiatry background in psychiatry. I was trained by Professor Murray, and psychosis has always been my interest, academic interest. And it was basically biological background in psychosis. But I think it was the experience, as I mentioned in my presentation, of going to Australia and becoming a professor in Australia and experiencing clinical psychiatry in a way that I had not ever been seen. That is working in the first episode of psychosis in an early intervention series for psychosis unit in Perth. That actually was a transforming experience for me. It made a lot of sense. It was so humanistic. It was so patient-based, and it was very effective. And I suppose that's what prompted me to start thinking of this is really important. This actually works. It's very good for young people. And one of the evidence came in that, reducing the duration of untreated psychosis, intervening very early, actually offers the possibility of altering the roots of psychosis in the long term. That actually made it for me. I really thought that was the thing I should sort of follow. So it has been a very long road, but these were the initial steps, so to speak.
Yes, thank you, Nikos. And you described the recruitment of politicians, and I'm sure many other struggles along the way. So that's great. And Seung-Wan, I know you came to Melbourne and you attribute some of your experience there, but what took you along that road to begin all of this? And I'd also perhaps ask you if you could reflect on your experience of changing the name of schizophrenia in Korean, because we just heard a very interesting comment also from Dr. Menia about the importance of terminology.
Thank you, Helen. As you know, in Asia, in most Asian countries, stigma against schizophrenia and mental illness is relatively high compared to Western countries. So duration of untreated psychosis is very long, over 1 year. So 10 years ago, we have changed the illness name schizophrenia to attunement disorder. After that, stigma level of schizophrenia is somewhat decreased, and in particular, many young people who have mental illness or schizophrenia tend to approach mental service more early. So we opened a youth mental health service center called MindRink. So actually, I stayed in Melbourne 8 years ago, and my experience in Origin Youth Health in Melbourne was very helpful to develop our early intervention service model. And this year, Korean government expand our service model to other parts in Korea.
So I hope our our early intervention service model would be helpful to other area in Korea and other Asian countries.
Thanks very much, Sung-Wan, and it's great to hear. So moving to our colleagues in Tunisia, and while doing that, we've had some questions come through from the audience, and perhaps while you're discussing the beginnings, you could also consider the question of, along with thanks for the great talks from the audience, and a comment that it's wonderful to see the scaling up of early intervention in so many countries. The audience member asked, could you please give us some examples of the cultural adaptations needed in your country? So perhaps while we move to Dr. Ouali, Drs. Asa and Lano in Tunisia, you might comment on that as well.
Okay, so maybe, well, I'm going to talk maybe first, but yes. I'm going to try to talk for really all of us. So what has brought us, first of all, what has brought us to, to be interested in early intervention and early detection? In fact, all three of us really are working in the only mental hospital in Tunisia, and it's a place which is very stigmatized. It's really sort of the last resort in terms of when you're seeking help for a psychiatric problem. So what all of us really see are patients with severe mental illness who come into the service maybe after 5 years or even sometimes 10 years, not having seen a mental health specialist for a problem, and the illness has been going on for that long. And of course, then you see what was hampering, in fact, the fact to come and see a psychiatrist was, of course, the high stigma attached to mental illness, and also the lack of knowledge. I think in Tunisia, it's both parts. It's really people not knowing and people not being able to really realize what the problem is. So many of them then will go and see traditional healers, and so this prolongs the care delay. And then, of course, it's the stigma, because this will then hamper, of course, family project, marriage projects, etc. Especially when these are young people who are being admitted, and then, the community gets to know that they have been admitted to the hospital. And I think this is something that really all of us brought us into the early intervention. Yeah, we thought we have to do something for these for the younger people, and work also on education, stigma reduction. Yeah. So
thank you so much, and either you or your colleagues, well, Uta, could you comment on how much adaptation you needed from the US to the
I agree. So it's true that, in fact, it was Dr. Ventura from UCLA, in fact, who did the first trainings for us. And of course, it's a big question, all the adaptation. So in fact, the CARMs, when I start with the CARMs, for example, so we so he taught the CARMs to us in English, but then there is an Arabic classic, sort of a standard Arabic version, there is a standard Arabic really, which is written and understood in all the Arabic countries. But however, each Arab country then has its local dialect, which it's not, it really differs quite a lot from country to country. So in fact, what we did now, having a standard Arabic version, many people, many young people wouldn't understand it really. So we, in fact, are adapting the English version, the short English CARMs, for example, to local Tunisian Arabic. The same operation we are currently doing with the PQB. We have first adapted it, thinking it would be good to adapt it to a more standard Arabic, but then we realized we got the feedback also from the mental health workers in the community, like the school psychologists, saying, you know, that the students, they don't really grasp the concepts. It has to be really close to, you know, the local, very local sayings. So we adapted it also once again to Tunisian Arabic. And then there are maybe other things which we have to take into consideration in Tunisia, which are like the traditional healers. There's a lot of discussion, and I know there's a lot going on in the world saying, okay, you should include, for example, traditional healers in the awareness rising, or you should even include them in trainings. So far, honestly, we haven't done it yet because it's in fact, it's a practice in Tunisia which somehow is not official. Mm-hmm. So it's very difficult to train them. And so usually what we say, and how you know, how our discourse is generally to say, okay, we understand that traditional healing, or, you know, is important for you, but please also come and continue the treatment here. You know, so we try to make it something sort of complementary, right, rather than, you know, sort of denigrating like traditional healing.
That's a very important reflection. Thank you very much. Yeah. So I turn now to our colleagues in Chile, Drs. Gonzalez and Nina, and I'll read out at the same time the comment from the other audience members that thank you all for, this is to the whole 4 presentations, for a wonderful range of talks. I really enjoyed listening and learning. I wonder what thoughts you have about the process of getting from starting up to being sustainable, and what are the different groups that you need to engage with. So we'll see if we have time to get back around the group with some of these questions as well. But to our colleagues in Chile, and thank you also for your comments about family and service user engagement that were very engaging. Dr. Gonzalez, Dr. Nina. I think you need to unmute.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I think that probably there is a huge challenge for a country like us with the scare of funds to make it this kind of service sustainable in the time. So probably if you work in like us in an institute and a hospital, we are in a psychiatric hospital too, like in Tunisia. So probably the first man or lady that you should be your friend is the director, the director of the institution, to get involved in all the development. We do a lot of communication of what we are doing. We do a lot of research. Alfonso won a grant a few years ago. He developed a lot of intervention regarding with the exercises in people with first episode, and maybe to give Alfonso time to say something too. Maybe we're moving to more involved, to get our users more involved in all their cares and all their to sustain the program in time.
Thank you. Dr. Gonzalez, did you want to comment?
Hi, everybody. Well, we are starting to implement this model of care, and I heard the Dr. Stefani's presentation, and I learned a lot of things that we have to do and a lot of things that we don't have to do. And I think that it's very important for us to convince our policymakers to implement this model. But we are starting. We are trying to share and to spread this model of care in our country. But it's not too easy because our mental health is. Well, we see a lot of people, so it's very important for us to know your experiences in other countries, not just in rich countries or developed countries. So good for us to hear your experience, and it's good to know that I think that if we work together and we share different experiences, we can implement this model in different countries.
Yeah, thank you so much. And perhaps I could ask Nikos to have the last word in response about the sharing of experiences.
No, it's truly wonderful. I mean, I enjoyed the talk so much in all the presentations, and there is a common theme. There is absolutely a common theme in the strive of young people trying to, follow the principles of early intervention in every country. Amazing that we're from all these different parts of the world and share these common values. And what can I say?
I think
it's a difficult process, isn't it? To sort of convince other people that this is the way forward. It takes a lot of perseverance. I mean, I might be saying this, but in many ways, I was in your situation a few years ago. It's only now that I can start claiming that we have a national policy on early intervention in place after many years of advocating for early intervention in my country. So I very much sympathize, and I very much enjoyed these presentations, actually.
Yes. So thank you. I think I'd like to be able to go around the group again, but we're already offline. And so thank you all very much. And this is where we miss the in-person experience, isn't it? We could go off and greet each other. But so I'm just noticing what my instructions are to give you now. But, we are. Oh, okay. Good. Well, thank you very much to the audience and for your questions. It's been a stimulating discussion. I believe we could have continued for quite a while. I'd like to ask Sun Wan and our colleagues from Chile and Tunisia to have another response. But it has been a real privilege to listen to each of your experiences as you reflect on beginning and developing the services and engaging families, service users in such creative ways with the adaptations you've mentioned. So thank you again to the organisers for this session and to each of you for all the work. It takes a lot of work to make these presentations, and join again today. Thank you.